The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Chasing Purpose. I'm your host, Kathleen Conner. And if this is your first time here, I'm glad you found your way in. And I hope you stay a while. If you've been here before, well, welcome back. We have a great show for you today. I want to just let everybody know that I've been sober for almost 5 years. September 1st will be 5 years. And it's a great achievement. And I did it for myself, not for any reason or addiction or any of those types of things. I did it because it no longer serves me. And why I bring this up today is that with maybe my sobriety, but certainly with the 30 years of therapy that I've been through, that I've realized that I am much more present within myself and within my environments. And I try to watch how I stand, how I interact with people, how I engage with everything and everyone and my energy and other people's energies. And it's been so really gratifying to feel that you're part of something. And last week when I talked to Wendy on the episode, I hope you all listened. It's a great one. If you didn't, check back into it. She and I were talking about a few things, and something came up to me during that conversation about a party I attended. And I remember being observant, as I always am and have been, especially since I've been sober, and how I've been observant, again, with myself, but also with others. And I'm always curious. I was a curious kid and I'm a curious adult. So I don't judge people or judge myself in situations, but I'm always observant and watching things and watching how people interact and watching how I interact, their body language. And it made me think about that party that Wendy and I were talking about. And I want to just go back to it because it really hasn't been bothersome, but I've been intrigued by it. And so I want to just go back to that party and what happened. It was probably maybe 6 weeks or so, maybe 2 months ago, maybe 30 or so people, different social circles. So some people, different circles knew each other in the room and everybody was friendly, and it was kind of an indoor party. Food was inside, a patio or a deck outside that was available for people to linger and to socialize as well. So it was great. No music, nothing to really entertain people other than conversation and food. And it was nice. And there were people there that I knew quite a bit of them, and I'm not afraid to make friends with anybody that I don't know. But I was watching this one couple, and that's what I was talking to Wendy about. They walked in, and I don't remember who walked in first or who came over the threshold first, and it's really not important. But what I did notice, and what mattered, was how they moved, how they performed. And that's what today's topic is about performance, social optics, and traditional images that we present, and the awards that I guess we're trying to win, even though we're kind of losing. Right? So they moved into the room and they weren't walking side by side with each other, not shoulder to shoulder, as I like to say in a healthier relationship. It doesn't mean they weren't healthy, but I was observing. And they weren't far apart. They were just slightly offset from each other, close enough that you wouldn't immediately recognize anything different with them. But again, not with anybody, but just far enough apart that you felt something was out of sync. Not wrong, just off. And so I observed them, and I observed them with people and with me, and how they engaged and how I engaged with them. And you wouldn't notice it, but most people weren't doing a lot of things at the party other than talking, laughing, and catching up and grabbing a drink and food. So people were there. But what I noticed was when they introduced themselves to the group or to people that they didn't know, it came across as she was the wife. And that's how this is my wife. His name was Todd. And to this day, I've been thinking about it, especially in the last week or so, trying to remember her name. I can't remember her name at all because I'm not sure I even heard it. I'm not sure I was even introduced to her other than as the wife, his wife, the role that she was playing or a part of. And it was interesting. And it wasn't that she was submissive, she just was that role. And that made me think about today's topic and the Oscar goes to, and how we perform within roles. And when they walked around the room again, not shoulder to shoulder, but a little bit offset. It was, "This is my wife." And I heard him say one time, "Well, I have to check with my wife first. My wife does that." And I also observed her, again, being a corporate executive or being in a corporate environment and a very male dominated role environment. I also realized, and I pick up on handshakes. I teach my son how to do a firm handshake, shoulders down, confident, head up, eye contact. And hers wasn't that. And some women do this quite often, and I don't understand it. The soft grip, the handshake I'm talking about, the soft grip, the limp wrist, the controlled and measured position of the body and the hand. It's maybe meant to come across as graceful or pretentious, more like it's composed and elevated. And I don't know, I just find it, I don't understand it. I understand the royalties and that they do it, and that it's part of their tradition, but I don't understand when it's been taken into, especially the modern world. And this woman had this handshake, and I remember seeing it and just thinking, oh, what a shame. Like, just, be proud, show some confidence. And not that handshake wasn't meant to be lacking in confidence, but it showed that way. I think that she wanted it to be image like and kind of regal, maybe a little bit, and it wasn't. It felt off, and it felt like a disconnection, perhaps, or that there was some distance there and some image being shown. And again, back to the roles and the Oscar goes to, it felt like she wasn't being introduced. Again, I don't think our name was even said. It was the role, not the person. And she smiled and she interacted, like she had done that 1,000 times before, which I'm sure she had done 1,000 times before. It wasn't something she was uncomfortable doing. It was just the way she had done it. And so I was just watching them, and I was wondering about the roles that they play, and we all play the social media roles and the images and the traditional things that we present. I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and the gentleman on the podcast, I wish I could remember whose it was, and as a reference, I'll have to think about it, but he was talking about that in society, what we have are government documents and rings that represent our position or our image as husbands and wives, and how that has become a performative thing for people to present is around the ring, and that people wear them for an image, perhaps, or for a role. And I had a friend of mine years and years ago, I remember this, that her husband didn't wear a ring. He had worn it, obviously, when they were first married. They had been married probably 20 to 25 years. And he just, traveling or sports or work or whatever reason, he just stopped wearing it. Not because he wasn't married anymore, that he didn't love her or wasn't committed to her, but he just didn't. And there was a time that she and I were talking, and it really started to bother her that he didn't wear it. And when she said something to me about it, like, "Oh, Bob's not wearing his ring. Do you notice that?" I didn't notice him ever wearing it or not wearing it. It didn't matter to me, because they were still a couple and they were still married. And she said, I would want him to wear the ring again, and I would want him to present himself as a married man, and that I want him to wear it because everybody else does. And I stopped her and I said, "Really? You want him to wear the ring, the wedding ring, because everybody else does? Because the people or the men that he's around, or the couples that you're around, wear theirs as well? And it's not because of a love or a commitment that you want him to show. It's because everybody else is doing it." And I thought, what an odd and really lacking statement, that you want him to do it, or she wanted him to do it because of an image, because of something that she thought he needed to show and present. And I am close enough to her that I said, "How territorial of you. It's like you're marking your territory with him with the ring. And she said, well, that's not what I meant. Of course, she got defensive, but it is what she meant. She meant that she didn't want him to be seen as unmarried, even though if anybody approached him in any type of promiscuous way, he would certainly not participate in that because he was married and he loved her and he was committed to her and he didn't need a ring to prove that. But yet she wanted him to have a ring in order to prove that he belonged and it was her territory and she was marking it with such a thing. And I thought it was very ironic and different of her to say things like that. And so that's where in our lives we think about what we want to present to people and what we do present, even if we don't know it, right? We on social media, we tend to, put things in the background or in situations of the frame of the photo. Perhaps I was at another friend's house. I remember seeing her social media image and it was around a holiday. I forget whether it was Valentine's Day or Mother's Day or birthday. It was something specific to her. Maybe it was Valentine's Day because I remember the bouquet of flowers being prominently displayed in the social media post. It was about something in general or something not about the flowers specifically, but something she was showing. And in the background, you could see this bouquet of flowers and how beautiful and kind of representing like, look at me type thing. And my husband did this for me. And I remember going to the house. It actually ended up being that day that the post was posted. And I remember going into the house and chatting with her and being with her and sitting in the kitchen. And there was no flowers to be seen. They were tucked away in the corner. And I thought, she had staged those for that social media post. She had put those in the background of the photo so that people could see and maybe recognize them as a strong and amazing and good couple, and that they were solid because the flowers were there presenting something that she wanted to show. But yet when you went to her house and you saw them in real life, them being the family or the house itself, the flowers were not predominantly shown. They were kind of tucked off into the corner. And I remember thinking, how odd that she would present that image and want to show everybody what really might not be there. So most of the time we can or we do, or a lot of people might show an image that isn't real and it's performative. It's around the social optic, a legacy that we think we're living as being the wife or the husband or the father or the mother, being the best image of that person instead of being the real person that is within that role. And most of the time, everything might look smooth and might show up easy and show up as something that fits well that no one really thinks about or questions. And that's kind of the image that we try to do. Like I've talked about in past episodes that people really don't know your life, right? You present something to someone in a 95% manner that maybe is skewed a little bit, that 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 is talked about or represented in a way that isn't often what it's like behind closed doors or behind in the house itself or the relationship itself. And it seems so performative. And that we wear kind of costumes for our day, the ring, for example. And I've seen it even with other people that just, they're afraid to say that things aren't good in their marriage. They're afraid to say that things aren't good in their relationship. And you don't have to broadcast it, but everybody has tough times and relationships have peaks and valleys, and we'd be foolish to not acknowledge them and not work through them. And that's what makes a strong relationship, is that we can go from those peaks to those valleys in a smooth, however, can seem like an exhausting manner if you're in that valley for too long and you forget what the peak is like. But you can get there through work and through acknowledging them instead of living a fake or performative or an image driven situation. And people tend to want to not be the ones that rock the boat or that are unpredictable or are present an image that is something that people may not notice at first, or they notice and they're concerned about it. Like if you don't wear your wedding ring, or you don't show up at a place at the same time, or if someone is missing from a social setting or from a situation where they are normally there. People raise their eyebrows, wondering what's going on, where are they, what's happening with them, or they ask questions. Where is or how is that person, looking and digging in a surface kind of manner, wondering what will be said. And I find it again, being observant and curious, that we tend to watch. I tend to watch things and see how people behave and how I behave in situations. And again, when this woman or this couple, I remember at the party, she would answer questions, and I spent some time with them and with her. He was often close within earshot, not being nosy, but just that was how they worked, kind of in a hula hoop, if you picture it. They may not have been shoulder to shoulder or side by side, but he was often, or they were often, in the background or close together with each other. And when you asked questions of her, I can't remember her name, I wish I could, and you asked her about what she did, or how she spent her time, or how what she enjoyed, the answer was always about them. They liked to, they did this, they enjoyed this restaurant, this food, they do this hike, or those types of things. It was never about her. And again, it made me curious. I tried to dig a little deeper as to really what did she enjoy. And again, it was mostly about the husband, Todd. I know his name because she said it quite often. And the son, TJ, and I assumed it was for Todd something, and a junior. And they talked about him being active in sports and his academics as well. Proud parents, and certainly had reason to be. But it was interesting, the vocabulary that they used, or she used. And so we have to just think about that, and we have to think about, more importantly, not about other people in the room. It was interesting and to observe them, but how we present ourselves in the room, and what kind of roles we're presenting ourselves in. And I've done it a lot through my professional career. I swear I could have won an Academy Award for for being on stage as an executive in a room and performing the roles and the tasks that I needed to. And it was showed value at that time, but it wasn't rewarding and it wasn't joyful for me. So it was something that I felt that I needed to do and wanted to do at that time, but it didn't feel authentic. And I was glad that those meetings were over when they were. I was glad that things ended when they did. We traveled quite a bit throughout my professional career to trade shows or conferences or whatever you want to call them. We all have done them, I'm sure, and we know what they're like. They're the hotels with the hotel food and the conference rooms and the breakout sessions. And, in sometimes late nights with dinners and drinking and karaoke or whatever happens, that the entertainment still continues. And I remember going sometimes with some people that weren't as extroverted or gregarious or as social as others. And I remember feeling that they were performing and feeling, they must be exhausted. And they were exhausted after the conference or after the day. They could perform in a short period of time, that 2 or 3 day, 3 nights, 2 day, 3 days, 2 nights type stint. But when they came back to their home and their own environment, they were exhausted. It took them several days or several nights to recoup and recover because, as we say, an introvert can only be an extrovert for so long, and vice versa, right? I mean, I'm an extrovert and I'm very social, and I know that when I'm isolated or feel isolated because of weather or storms or something, or just time or something that keeps me in the house, I know that what I need is to get out and just have some white noise and to be able to participate in a social environment. It doesn't mean that I have to talk to people, just even a grocery store, something that I can see people, be around people, engage, that white noise type thing. I always joked when I was in a situation, and I'd say I was sick or something for a couple days and down and out or something in my room, isolated. And when I came out, what I wanted to do, and again, this was years and years ago, and people don't often frequent these places. I always said, just take me to a bowling alley because that was the white noise. It was constant. It was coming from everywhere. It was the pins and the balls going down the alley and stuff. And I always joked, and of course, we often had fun there as well. So, but those are the things that I want to talk about. And it reminded me of the party and the performance that I saw and experienced there. And I've seen it with women being quiet and being on the outside of their spouse and being introduced as this woman was as the wife. But I've also seen it where the women seem to be quiet and representing themselves in an image that is almost submissive or passive, maybe shy or something. But then you see her give a look to the husband or to the child, the son or daughter, and they just zip right into place like an army sergeant had given them orders, and they just see a look of something, and wow, she's actually the ruler of the roost, and they're performing a role to keep her happy for some reason or to fulfill. And so I watch a lot of things when I'm at parties, especially, and I saw again at another party or situation, social situation, where a husband and wife or couple go through a buffet line of some sort of the food line, and she would lead, him, or just in front, manners or so, and get the plate, and then they would go eat. And afterwards, she would stand behind him at the chair. She would get up from her chair and stand behind him as though observing who was watching him and who was kind of keeping an eye on him. I found that to be interesting too, that she didn't socialize. She stood there again, kind of territorial, like he's mine type situation. And I'm watching everyone who's watching him type thing. It made it interesting. I see all those things. And so you have to not only be comfortable with yourself. I think removing alcohol or any kind of substance that you're putting into your body that that changes your chemicals, your body's chemistry, is often a good step. And then you can become grounded not only in your environment but also within yourself. And so we have to figure out what kind of award are we presenting or performing for. And I think that's what today's topic is about, is that performative image legacy thing that we think we're leaving behind as being the good person, the good. We can be all of that and authentic. We don't have to perform and mark our territory or be somebody that somebody else wants us to be. And we have can have our own identity within a relationship as well. I've seen that in situations in couples that have been married a long time, that you don't see one spouse without the other, or one person without the other, and they suddenly become the same identity in the same house, the same person, the same routine. And it's interesting to see that as well. And I love that they have a solid relationship and they want to spend that much time together. But when you talk to them individually, and especially when I've talked to the woman, you'll hear things like, oh, I love to get my hair cut because, it's just a relaxing time, or I go get my nails done, or, go get a pedicure or something, or do something for herself. And it sounds like there's real joy with that. And in my head, I think, is it because, it's something that she can do by herself and she doesn't need to have him always there sharing the hula hoop again? So it's those types of things that I think that we perform. We perform in relationships within our partners. We perform as parents, trying to show the good image, the good mother, having the great child or the amazing child. No one's perfect, that's for sure. I'm not. Neither is my child, and nor do I claim to be. I don't do everything right, and he and I talk about things that I do well and things that I don't do well. And I ask him often, how can I be there for you and support you in a different way at that situation? If that situation doesn't quite work out, we try to re-engage and go back to it afterwards and say, that stunk, that I triggered you and you triggered me and we ended up arguing and that just wasn't healthy. And so we try to come back to it and try to to talk about it in a way that's more productive and more healthy. And in other relationships, you have to do that as well. It's nice to call a break and come back to things and say, I really need time. Even though I'm a person who likes to talk and talk things through, and want to be able to communicate my feelings and be heard, and want to be able to listen to the other person's feelings and so that they feel heard. But if I have a situation where my son doesn't feel like talking, I have to respect that as well. And I have to understand that, that he can't be the person that I need or want him to be, that he needs to be the person that he needs and wants to be. And I have to love and respect him for the person that he's becoming, and I do. So those are things that we can do together, and I can do as I observe. And again, not through judgment. I'm not sitting there looking at this woman saying, or this couple, or anybody that I come in contact with, thinking that I'm better than them. I'm not. I know I'm not perfect. I know I have a lot of things to learn and to grow, and that's what I'm here to do on this earth. And through my time here is to grow and be better every day, and to learn from others, because I don't have it figured out in any roles as a mom, as anything. I don't have it figured out, and I'm out to say that I don't, because I don't want to be that person that feels and comes across as a know-it-all. So I try to make sure that I'm watching myself, my body language. I watch people's body language. I see people in situation really rear up with their body language. They cross their arms, and I can too. And when I do, I often try to remember, like, oh, arms down, shoulders down, try to head up, confidence, and be part of the room in a warm manner. I think that part of not drinking and being sober made me realize that I can pick up not only on my energy in a room, but other people's energies in a room as well. And I think that we have to remember that. I follow somebody on social media, on Instagram, and I think that it's important to know that when we see something or someone on Instagram, it isn't always, it's what they want or what we want to present on social media that looks, the filters are there, things look great and everything. There's no shadows or no, creases in anything. And that's not always what happens. And there's a woman that I follow, and her life looked perfect in every way. And then she disappeared from social media for a little while, and she came back and said that she had put herself into a facility for an eating disorder, and how she had come to terms that what she was presenting wasn't often what was real. And I thought that that was the most authentic thing that she could have done, was come to tell us as her followers and people that loved her and respected her that she wasn't being authentic, and now she was planning on being so. And so it was refreshing to see. And that's, I think that people can come and meet me and think, oh, she's whatever, arrogant, or whatever term they want to use. I'm not. I don't want to be. I want to be there for people. I'm just observing. So people see me as who I am, and I don't often perform the way they want me to, and so therefore they're uncomfortable, and they bounce that back off of me, saying that I'm not, open or available for them, which isn't true. I'm open and available for anybody and everybody. I'm just not there to have the life sucked out of me in a situation. If I feel as though I'm having a conversation with somebody, and the person isn't engaging or isn't answering in an authentic or in more of a performative way, I am respectful and I listen, but I don't I want to learn from people, and someone who's politely engaging and surface level or hollow. I hate to use those terms with anybody. It's tough to learn. It's tough to get close to them, and whether they're doing it because they feel that they're above or below or wherever they are. I just am curious about that, and I observe them. There's another book and a podcast that not podcast, an audio book that I just was listening to, and I loved it. It's Us by Terrence Real. I highly recommend it. I've recommended it to several people, recommended it and talked about it on our last podcast as well. Terrence Real wrote it. He narrates it. And he talks in there about people being grandiose. And I think that was a great word, because I see people performing in a grandiose manner, in an almost pretentious manner, whether it's through social media and through photos and through things that they're presenting, or just in conversations that they come across as kind of uppity. And I often, again, I'm intrigued by that and curious about why that is. And it's because people don't want people to know them as their true selves. And people say that they're maybe private. Oh, I'm private, and my friends would define me as private. And I think, would they? Or would they define you as withdrawn or disengaged or shallow or surface level, I think is another term. So, and it doesn't matter how other people define, but I think people often think that they're presenting their image in one way. It's like the written word, and through text or through communication, email or whatever, we perceive to send something in one way and people receive it in another way. And we have to remember that our written word and our image and our stance and our handshakes and our body language may be wanting it to be presented in one way. Presented is probably not the right word, but come across, maybe in a better term, in one way, when it's being received in another, when it may be people, maybe you may want to not share things with people because you don't want people to know about your life, but then people often take it as that maybe you're snobby, or that you're distant, those types of things. And it's so interesting to me, how we forget about perceive versus receive, and how it's really being received by somebody, our image, our energy, our authentic or non-authentic stance that we take on things, the surface level. Now, I'm very talkative, I'm very gregarious. You all know that about me. I'm very open. But as I've said before, I have a lot of friendlies. I keep in touch with everybody. I probably still keep in touch with kids that I went to kindergarten with. I know I do. And certainly people I went to high school and college and play sports with and have lived next door in the same neighborhood. I have a million friendlies, but I only have maybe 2, 3 friends, deep soul connections of people that know me and know things about me and know enough about me that I feel safe with them to tell them things. And I think that that's important too. I think that uh, we have those groups of friendlies, and I tell my son that all the time too. He doesn't have to be friends with everybody. You know, he's 13, soon to be 14. He doesn't have to be friends with everybody. But what I want him to be is friendly. I want him to be friendly with everybody. And I want him to be somebody that people rely on to be there for them if someone feels that they need him, that he's there in a capacity that he can give in some, so that people don't drain too much of him, as people shouldn't drain too much of anybody. They come to people and for things that may not be able to give. And I think I see that a lot with relationships and with my clients. Again, I'm a life coach, and you can find my information on chasingpurpose.com. But in a life coach manner, I see a lot of women. I do have a couple of men as well, but I see a lot of women that come to me and expect their spouses or their partners or their kids to fulfill a need for them that they're not yet ready to fulfill themselves. You know, they don't understand why their husband's behavior or their kids' behavior isn't making them happy. And I say to even my own son, when we have situations, that his behavior isn't my responsibility, that My behavior is my responsibility. How I react, how I engage, how I communicate is my responsibility, and his is his. And I know that we influence people in our lives and in our house about their behavior. I can certainly, if I come in, which I don't, but again, it's just a hypothetical situation. If I come in the house storming and stomping around, slamming doors, and all of that, the energy in the house and the shift in the house is going to change, and his behavior will change. And I'm influencing it because of my behavior. And I have to remember that that's not fair or right for him or right for anybody. And the same thing, like I can't expect him to do everything or anything that will make me happy. I'm in charge of my own happiness, and I'm in charge of where I stand and sit at the table that I sit at. I listen, I acknowledge. I don't often do everything perfectly. I don't. I can tell you that. He and I will have conversations about, and I will ask about how I can do better. And I think we all should in any relationship. So I think it's more important, again, when you're hearing things, and I think we've all heard them for years, and it doesn't make sense until we're in that situation, that being right in a relationship or in an image or in a situation, social situation, where we're presenting ourselves as an image, the right thing, the right wife, the good mother, the perfect spouse, that being right isn't always what gets us rewarded. It's what feels right or what feels important to us, and how we can make our own self be nurturing and fulfilling and create happiness and joy within ourselves. And when we get to that place, that place of, again, I've talked about it in past episodes, that head, heart, and soul alignment, when everything feels connected and nothing is triggered in us, emotions, thoughts, overthinking, heart racing, anxiety, or stomach presenting in, stomach pains or in rolling bellies, all of that type of stuff. It's a lot easier to stay centered with ourselves when we can pull ourselves back into an emotion that feels grounded and centered. And we do that by taking care of ourselves first, less performance, less award driven, less social media performative social optics. We don't need to have flowers in the background in a I don't know, in a background where it looks fuzzy, but they're there for a reason. Again, those are things that you may show people because it's important for you to show them something, a relationship, a reward that you've received from your spouse, or any of those types of things. But it is not proving anything. You have to prove everything and be everything for yourself before you can be and prove anything to anybody else. And if you're so worried about image, about your role and your performance with the roles, you're missing what it really feels like to be there for yourself. And so that's what no one talks about, in my opinion, enough, is about what you can receive, all of the anniversary cards, all the acknowledgement, all the birthday wishes, all of the social media thumbs up, likes, whatever it is. But if you're feeling that that's not giving it to yourself or for yourself, then it's just there for performance, for an image, for an award, for an Oscar, say, for those types of things. And it's really, once you get to that place and once you feel it, it's not often easy to keep yourself in the place of head, heart, and soul or gut aligned. It isn't every moment or every situation conscious effort to keep yourself aligned and centered. But once you do, it's so rewarding, and you can hear your own ovation inside your head, that you don't get triggered anymore, and that you don't answer things with a reaction or with a comment or a tear, or looking for someone to fill something or a place for you because you can't fill it for yourself. And that is very, I don't know, it's not rewarding, and it's often puts a lot of responsibility on the other person, and our children, if we put them in a situation where we're looking for them to fulfill our emotional need as a parent, as a mom. If I'm looking for my son to be something for me, an emotional sounding board, or an emotional I don't know, overflow for me, that's not fair for him. If he has to feel my emotions or help me with my emotions, then how can he feel his own? So I have to remember that. We have to remember that as people as well, the responsibility that we're putting onto our spouses and our partners and our kids and our coworkers around carrying on our own emotions, because we're afraid to carry them for ourselves. So we have to really, 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 really try hard and think about things. And I will just put things out, is why we do things, why we stand where we do with our spouse or with our sons and with our children, and where we're placing them in our lives and in our stance. And I watch that now with my own son. When I introduce him or when he's with me, I want him to stand with me shoulder to shoulder, often and on a lot of places, because I want him to present himself as an equal, as a partner, not a partner, but as a child that is strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with me, and with any relationship, be able to be there for the person as an equal. And I think that's important within any relationship. As women, we tend to fade into the background. We tend to let our spouse or our boss or even our kids stand in front of us or lead the way. And I think we need to stop doing that. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder as an equal, and as someone whose emotions, thoughts, fears, desires are worthy of being heard and felt, and take that time. Now, it is hard, because it is an environment where we're still trying to break away. At least I think we are. I hope we are trying to break away from traditional views and traditional roles. And again, this podcast, I wish I remembered whose it was. It was a couple of weeks ago I listened to it, and it talked about, there was a gentleman on it. It was two gentlemen on the podcast talking about, why they stayed married in an unhealthy relationship and in a toxic relationship. And their answer, when push came to shove in the podcast, was that they realized that they were staying in the relationship, no matter how toxic it was or unhealthy for both parties, that they stayed there because their relationship, the marriage or the relationship that he was describing, was exactly how his parents' relationship was, and probably the same as his grandparents' relationship was, and the great grandparents' relationship. So it was, well, everybody's doing it. This is how I think a relationship should be. This is the roles that I should be playing, or we should be playing, because I'm just as unhappy as my parents were unhappy. And therefore I have to, persevere and be resistant and resilient to any change, or through any change. And so the gentleman on the other side of the podcast, who was the host, I believe, commented and said, well, your great grandmother had a buggy whip and got around in a, horse with a carriage, and you don't. Like, that was her mode of transportation and her knowledge of what she had, and she made do with what she had, but you don't have to. You have other means and other areas of education and of culture and of technology that you can learn to do things differently than she had access to, or your grandfather had access to, or your parents had access to. And just because that they were in a situation that was less than fulfilling doesn't mean that you have to continue to be it. And I found that it was interesting. They also talked about how one of their other guests came on, and he was the first person in his family for generations, and the first one that went through a divorce, and how he was the talk throughout the neighborhood and throughout the family because he was divorcing or divorced, and what came. And instead of, and this was, just, it seemed like it was just about 7 years ago. It wasn't like it was 25 or 30 years ago. Divorces, as we all know, the percentage of marriages that end in divorce is higher than 50%, pretty close to 50%, but at like 52%. So a lot of relationships end in divorce. And so it's more of the norm now than it was certainly generations ago. But even 7 years ago, when this gentleman was talking about going through his divorce and how it impacted the family because no one else had ever been through one, it was interesting how he was authentic enough to take on questions and to take on reasons, and to acknowledge that he didn't want to stay in a traditional image, social optic, bad relationship. And now both he and his ex-wife are better co-parents, better friends, better partners for their new partners, because they divorced and because they learned through it. He did say that the divorce was challenging. Of course, all divorces, all relationships that end and change can cause challenges, and can be difficult. And he acknowledged that, but he said, what a change, what a profound experience it was for him to be a better father and be a better co-parent to his ex-wife. And he actually called her his best friend, that she was, how he said it, I remember now, it's coming back. How he said it was that she was one of his favorite people, even to this day, and more so to this day, that she was one of his favorite people after the divorce than she was as his wife. And part of the conversation around that, now it's coming back, was that we should all seek to be someone's favorite, even if we're not in a relationship or in a household or in a cohabitant relationship with them. We should present ourselves so that we can be there for them and their favorite manner, and that we perform in our favorite role and position and influence and person that they can rely on as well. So again, I'm learning all the time. We all are. I thank you for coming today. Please watch how you observe and watch how you present. Watch your body language, watch your energy, watch how you can engage just in your car with your kids and with your spouse and in your household. Watch how energy and how people's tone, body language, position, and just overall presence changes things. And I think that that's the role, that's the Academy Award that we should be winning, is being present enough within ourselves to know that not only do we affect our day, but we affect everybody else's day that is around us and in our energy, and they with us. And if people feel off, we don't need to be around them, right? We have several rooms in our house or in our office or in our environment that we can just choose not to engage with those people in a politely kind and compassionate manner. So again, just think about that. Think about how we're observing, how we're presenting, being perceived and received in our energy. And I thank you for showing up here today for yourself and for me. This has been great. Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep chasing purpose. Thank you very much. See you next week.